You think about your goals in life, right? You know, what do you want to be? Who do you want to be? What do you want to accomplish in your life? And think about this poor widow here. And, you ever say to yourself, I want to be a giver. I want to be a giver. I remember hearing a priest friend of mine. He was giving me some advice about working with married couples, and he was saying what a challenge it is when two takers get married. If you get two takers get married, it's usually going to be a bad marriage. It's going to end. If you have a giver and a taker, it might work. If you have two givers, it's probably going to be a happy marriage. To be a giver. Lord, really and truly, that the grace of God would be in us, that would be transforming us, would be healing us, that we would be givers, that we would give sacrificially, that we would give and trust that God gives in return. That, I've said this many times, that we can't outgive the giver. Jesus says, it is more blessed to give than to receive. St. Francis says, it is in giving that we receive. And this poor widow, first of all, she's poor and she's a widow. And she has 2 coins, and she doesn't give one, she gives both. And there's something about the fact that it's 2 and she gives both. And she's an example. I heard there's a passage in Jesus says, unless you renounce all of your possessions, you cannot enter the kingdom of God. And so she humbles us, doesn't she? She shames us a little bit, doesn't she? She should, but again, the happy thing about this is when we humble ourselves, God lifts us up. And when we really humble ourselves, God begins to change us. And don't we all want to be givers anyway? We do, don't we? So this process of being humbled and then, then my very practical brain, I can't read this gospel without my practical brain. Like, well, who's going to take care of her, really and truly, it's like and Paul warns us about giving ourselves into poverty. He says, Paul has a rather long, a long exposition on giving in 2 Corinthians, where he goes on about, don't let your giving make you impoverished, but at the same time that we have to give sacrificially. And so this poor widow and her 2 small coins, and she gives in a way that costs her something. And most of the time we just give from what we have left over. And so we're humbled by her again, aren't we? We are humbled by her. And Lord, have mercy on me and make me a giver. So we're introduced to Daniel. And what about Daniel? What we learn about Daniel is that he's noble and that he's courageous and that he's charismatic and that he's faithful. And he's going to be a prophet that gives some beautiful and prophecies about the coming of the Messiah. But Daniel refused to eat from the king's table because the king's table, they offered the wine and the meat from the table to the false gods. And that's why he said he didn't want to eat it. And so the faithfulness of Daniel, the generosity of the widow. I want to be faithful, and I would like to be a giver too. And God's still working on me. Okay.